Hello there. My name's Henry today. I am a recovered alcoholic. I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a broker. And I basically have no licenses as far as you're concerned. Anything I'm saying is for entertainment and uh, entertainment. It's all anecdotal. This is my experience with recovering from alcoholism. Trying to make it clear that in a lot of cases, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to read the Daily Reflections book for August 17th, 2026. It's called Righting the Harm. In many instances, we shall find that though the harm done others has not been great, the emotional harm we have done ourselves has. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, found on page 79. Have you ever thought that the harm you did a business associate, or perhaps a family member, was so slight that it really didn't deserve an apology, because they probably wouldn't remember it anyway? If that person and the wrong done to him, or her, I guess, or them, done to him keeps coming to mind time and again, causing an uneasy or perhaps guilty feeling, then I put that person's name at the top of my amends list and become willing to make a sincere apology, knowing I will feel calm and relaxed about that person once this very important part of my recovery is accomplished. Period. The end of the reading. I really agree with a lot of what was just read to you, read to me also, because I heard myself saying it, much like, you ever think that some kind of harm you caused another person, let's just say, didn't deserve an apology because they probably wouldn't remember anyways? I don't want to comment much about going through life that way, because that kind of sounds to me like then I'm just going to say whatever I want because they probably won't remember tomorrow. But that requires me like editing, censoring certain things. So now wherever my standard is, I might call you some thing that I don't find that offensive, let's put it that way, that you find very offensive, and you take great offense at that and are harmed in some way. What did it say yesterday? I couldn't get this thing together. Physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. Here's another thing. Let's read the 8th step. Or I'll read the 8th step. It's out of this book in the back on page 375. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Period. The end of the reading. Now, I found my card yesterday. I couldn't find this, where it says stuff that I'm sure you can't read either about how this book is put together, I believe. There's 4 weeks in the month, so each week has a different purpose, or to be used as an educational tool in a different way. Still anecdotal, though, because none of these people are attesting to be doctors, physicians, psychologists, or any astronauts or any of that. The first week is orientation. Second week is methodology. The third week, which we're in now, is the execution. I could not remember that word yesterday. I kept calling it the doingness part, the execution of the action, the actual work. And then the fourth week of each month, that's the transformation, or maybe the transformation you could see. If you're not getting the transformation, maybe you haven't done the execution properly. If you haven't done the execution properly, or you're not getting the right transformation, maybe the methodology was wrong, or the orient, or something like that. That's how I'm looking at this kind of thing. I have been a lifelong student of various things, so I do believe in the way a lot of textbooks are put together, certainly. But anyways, man, that's all. Yesterday, man, I just went off the rails again. I think it's the coffee. They're putting something in the coffee. So I agree with all this stuff. The righting the harm. The only thing I didn't like here, maybe, was then I put that person's name at the top of my amends list and become willing to make a sincere apology. So the first few times I read that and thought about it, I wasn't agreeing so much with it because it said, I become. I don't know what verb tense that is, to be sure, because that was in the past. Well, anyhow, I took it wrong, or I took it differently. I took it in a non-helpful way. And this, this is the very thing, I think, that somewhere I had this open on a computer just this morning, looking up stuff about the 8th step. And belay my last remark there. I was looking at stuff this morning about the 8th step, but this is not where I heard what I'm about to say, is that the word denial kept popping up at the stuff. Man, it should be readily apparent I am not a doctor or an educator with any kind of academic license to teach anybody anything, really. I'm just relaying to you my story. So, what I did like, let's go there. Because I mentioned this, maybe this is just my ego talking, but I've mentioned this throughout. Oh, here. When I said, let's read the 8th step, and I read the 8th step, there's a big fat comma right in the middle of the 8th step that says, made a list of all persons we had harmed, big fat comma, kind of implying, or at least the way I look at it, because if I'm unwilling to do anything, it's like, okay, well, I'll just make a list then, and turn that comma into a period, make a list of any kind. And then it says, make a list of all persons we had harmed. So it has some constraints. I like that. Keep us on a path, not a really winding path, keep us on the rails. But it does have a comma, in fact. And that word, is that a conjunction word? And became willing to make amends to them all. So maybe that means there's two things to be done here. Make a list and become willing. In whatever tense of that verb. Oh, see it in here, it says became. So we didn't make, we made in the past tense. Made, direct, I'm sorry, I skipped it. Made a list of all persons we had, not have, or has, had in the past. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And so somehow for whatever reason, mind picked that up, that this person said, if Well, here, let me get back to this thing now. I've been bringing, oh, wait a minute. I didn't finish this thought. So there's these two parts. We make a list and then we become willing. I don't know if you could say I made the list and then I became willing, because in the making of the list, I became willing to do the next thing, which is to make an amend to that person. And the step is quite a bit more inclusive, because it's all the people we had harmed and make amends to all of them. And that might be too big a pill to swallow. I know it was for me. This step, the step itself, the making of the list and the becoming willing. See, I never really became willing for years. It took me like a decade in certain cases to actually do that part, to become willing, to then go search for these people and see if there was some way to make this amend that I had become willing to make. I was willing to face that kind of heat, tension, pain. Because, well, pain is, it's in effect again now, like pain, threats, and two other things are motivators, but they're not very good because they drag a lot of baggage with them. When yourself, yeah, and I don't know how this can ever be done, but when you can make a decision that hasn't been influenced from the outside world, then that is your decision. And when you make a decision to do anything, it's just more pure or clear or something. It might just feel better too, whether it succeeds or not, whatever you did with the decision. So, I mean, because there's like brainwashing and there's all kinds of influence on people. You can threaten people, coerce them, and say all this stuff, and they might comply and do whatever action you're suggesting they do. And no, I'm saying that isn't going to be like this pure decision with no outside influence. They were influenced. They did something, and that feels wrong to a human. To this human, that feels wrong. It's like, in some instances, I willingly, as far as I know, signed up to the military. Like it was slightly influenced because of fear. And so that drove me into the recruiter's office, essentially. And then they said all their stuff, and I liked it, and I agreed, and I thought this would be a fantastic thing. And for the like 98% range of the entire experience, it was. But that 2% part, there were times where I'm like, why did I listen to that guy? If I hadn't have listened and agreed to what that person said, whoever it was, I probably wouldn't be right here right now dealing with this. And so that had some resentment attached to it. I made a decision that wasn't like entirely fully my own, because I was threatened or coerced or cajoled even, or pushed into. Okay, so this thing made a list of people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now, I'm saying right away when I was first working the 8th step, I just had to eliminate the whole second part of that, because I couldn't see any way of, when I really had just a beginning list that I had written down. And this is two different things now too. The list I made were lists, plural. One was just in my memory, in my head, and there was another one that was on the table on the paper. And I made a little diagram of this thing the other day that I don't know if I can find today, which would be par for the course, maybe. Here, if you can see this, that's a list of names. Bob, Ted, Alice, Daniel, going down the page here, over here, or up the page, whatever. And then there's a series of boxes in 2 columns. This column above my finger there, it says, I can't read it, no willing. No, it says the first row, yes, willing. Yes, I'm willing to make an amend. Okay, oh, I didn't finish this. So there's like 2 parts of this step. And there's the 4 things, the methodology, the execution, we got the orientation, methodology, execution, and transformation. We're in the execution phase, which is in the second part of the step. We became willing. Well, whatever, just don't crucify me over that. At that big fat comma I mentioned, this is like the second part of the step, the second part of the month, and oh man. So now what I'm going to be talking about for the next 2 weeks, if not just only a week, is the actual becoming willing part. Hopefully by now, in the first 2 weeks, you figured out a way on how to make the list, who you put on the list. And that is what I agree about with today's reading was, have you ever thought the harm you did a business associate or perhaps a family member was so slight that it really didn't deserve an apology, because they probably wouldn't remember it anyhow. And I was mentioning this like all throughout this month so far, is that, and I really laid into it yesterday, I think, about sitting on a couch somewhere. Theoretically, you could just, steps 1 through 8, maybe certainly 1 through 7, you could do just in one room, sitting in one chair, in one morning or one day, making a list of all the people we had harmed. Even if it's an enormous list, the bigger the list, the greater the risk of forgetting somebody, and maybe that's why we write these things down. And now I don't want to forget this thing, is that it took me, I just had to forget about the willingness. I'm writing down a list of people I had harmed. It was less than 100. It was more than 5. It's like I wrote them down. Maybe look at this like the beginning of Tropic Thunder, the movie, and I'll just stop there, because what I'm going to suggest is that I knew I'd harmed 10 people. This is fictitious. It was probably more or less. I don't remember. That's not the point. The point is, I knew I harmed 10 people. But there's no way 5 of those people are getting an amend. So that was the mental list. I made that list incompletely. It wasn't complete. Then I did make a different list, the real list, where I wrote it down on paper, much like this, where I had written down Bob, Ted, Alice, and Daniel. Okay, now that doesn't take very long. This is my point. What takes time is that our mind, our brain, depending on your discipline level, I guess, is going to start thinking. And it's going to be like, okay, well, what about Bob? Oh, there's another movie. Does he deserve an apology or an amend? And then, like today's reading was saying, have you ever thought that the harm you did a business associate or perhaps a family member was so slight that it really didn't deserve an apology because they probably wouldn't remember it anyway? Okay, and so it's making that determination or that decision there about whether or not they're worthy of your amendment or whatever. Man, I gotta take this. What? No, I don't have to take this. Okay, so I didn't turn that off, I hope. Sorry for that. I should have this thing turned off. But I'm dealing with more stuff again. The time burn, the thing that takes a big... I'm so busy, you're going to have to call me back in 20 minutes. The thing that takes a long time that would negate or make this thing sitting on a couch in one day, doing steps 1 through 7, and then doing step 8, making the list of even up to 100 names, shouldn't maybe take that long. What takes time is that our mind is going to trick us, and we're going to be like, well, Bob doesn't deserve an apology because it happened so long ago. Probably wouldn't. He probably wouldn't remember, and it wasn't that big of a deal. So Bob's not going on the list. And then, okay, well, as time progresses and time goes on and stuff, and you realize that this is happening, if that person and the wrong done to him keeps coming to mind time and again, causing an uneasy or perhaps guilty feeling, then I put that person's name at the top of my amends list and become willing to make a sincere apology, knowing I will feel calm and relaxed about that person once this very important part of my recovery is accomplished. My mind started to drift because that's... Okay, so we've broken this step into like 2 parts. Hopefully we've successfully completely done the first part. We made a list of all people we had harmed. Or here's a little bit of a slippery area. Like I said, I had 5 people. There's no way they're getting any of this amendment stuff, so don't. And then I wrote down 5 names out of the 10. That'd be the Tropic Thunder thing. Out of those 10 stories or 10 books, 5 got published. Out of the 5 published books, 2 got a movie deal. And this is the movie of the making of the thing or whatever, and I forget all that. If that person and the wrong done to them keeps coming up, it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to move that from the inside imaginary list and write it down on the paper and then put a check in this box where, in this case, Bob is willing, or I mean, I am willing, whoever I called myself today, I forget again already. I write down Bob, and I'm willing to extend an amendment. And then I'm indeterminate. I don't know yet if Ted gets an amendment or not. What helps me make that decision is this statement right here, is that if that person keeps coming to mind, well, then I'm going to put them on the written list, like these 4 names, Bob, Ted, Alice, and Daniel, or whatever they are. Move it out of the head and put it on the list, written down, concrete reality kind of thing. And then I'm going to, determine whether or not they get my amend. Was it a big enough deal? And what helps me make that decision is I was losing a lot of sleep. Even up to, man, like 35 and 40 years ago, when I made the written list and made the decision that to become willing. It took me, like, in the case, just more than 3 decades. A lot of that was spent drinking, but then even after being sober for like 2 decades, there's no way that person is getting an amendment or an apology or anything. But it kept keeping me awake, this uneasy, perhaps guilty feeling kept coming up, man. Maybe that's why I'm bald on top and everywhere else. Hair turned gray and fell out, and just chronic health, whatever. Just it wasn't a good situation. I thought maybe it's got something to do with all this resentment I'm carrying around with me and hatred every single day. And certainly my anger level was heavily influenced on that, or my patience level also. So what I like to do when I don't understand things, which is frequently, I will feel calm and relaxed about that person once this thing is accomplished. So then if I'm looking for this part, calm and relaxed, maybe regrowing hair instead of losing hair, no more hair turning gray, no more hair falling out, no more heartburn, maybe get a relaxative, restorative night's sleep because this thought of the harm I caused somebody isn't there any longer, or at least not to the degree it was, because that's kind of more a ninth step thing I was about to launch into, but I've already been talking 26 minutes. Well, this stuff, I don't know, man. It's not easy and it's not really simple. Somebody with a better grip on reality maybe would be able to make it seem so and get this done a lot quicker. I don't know. But if something keeps bugging me and is keeping me up at night, like this person said, if that person and all this stuff causing uneasy and guilt, I put that name at the top of my amends list. I just didn't like the writing in here, and I still have major issues with things like that. And I found something else out this morning. Let's just go down this little road a bit. Although an alcoholic is never cured or fixed, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. What can happen is the disease progression phase can move into a lesser threat, remission, where it's like any other kind of, well, any other would imply it is a virus, but like any other virus, or like a virus, alcoholism can be put into remission. So you're not actively poisoning yourself any longer with the drug, with the alcohol. For whatever reason, you're not doing that anymore. But once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I don't know where it comes from your genes, from God, if you were created in the womb in that way or whatever, mysteriously made in the, or whatever, or if it was your parents had something to do with it, and when they got together and you came out as a result, all that junk filtered down into you, and you were an alcoholic right from the moment of conception. And then it's just sitting there like a dormant virus or something like that, that until you actually get alcohol in your system, you're fine. But as soon as that alcohol gets in there, bam, you're just full-blown alcoholic, and you can't stop drinking it until, let's just suggest, you do some of these steps in AA. That seems awful, but I don't want to get hung up in this. Because which road am I going down now, right? The difference between a recovered and recovering alcoholic. Although an alcoholic is never cured or fixed because it's a chronic progressive disease, apparently by some literature, you can arrest the actual poisoning of yourself by stopping drinking somehow, whether it be with AA or witchcraft or whatever. I like to go extreme with things. I said some stuff yesterday that you should not listen to me sometimes. But what am I trying to say here? Oh, I found this out this morning, and I agree with it. I don't know if it's true for sure, but what is a recovered alcoholic and what is a recovering alcoholic? The big book, which I believe is the closest thing to a textbook we have for alcoholics and alcoholic recovery. it's whatever the protocols laid forth in the big book are, per se. A lot of people have used that method and achieved relief, achieved remission, achieved just a better peace of mind, maybe, because not they haven't achieved a cure. Anyhow, so the recovering is giving respect to the fact that you know that even though you've stopped drinking, if you ever pick that stuff up again, it is highly, super, very much so likely to happen into turning full blown again that you will not be able to stop drinking. You just have one drop of that crap and bam, you just drink the whole keg until you're dead, to make the extreme analogy thing here, metaphor, or whatever I'm talking about. Whereas if you just don't ever touch it again, however you go about doing that, it will remain in remission. Now, another reason for doing any of these steps, and like in particular this 8th step, because the really, really important part is like the next step, and we're not going to worry about that yet. This is still like we're in that room 1 hour later. I was drunk in the gutter. I sobered up completely, or somewhat, or some level, with this intention to get sober, and then I did. I quit drinking, and now I'm sitting on a couch somewhere someday, whether it be 10 years later, still sober, or 1 hour later, still sober, whatever. And you make this thing, it's like, you know what, I'm powerless. My life is unmanageable. That's step 1 in a nutshell. And then I came to believe that there's a way to fix this. That's step 2. A power greater than can fix this. And all this. Step 3, I made a decision to let that happen. That's kind of how do you put a grip on that. That's why this can all be done like in one morning. This is all like this mental framework stuff, sitting on a couch somewhere thinking about it. Not even writing anything down yet until after step 3, step 4, we do this moral inventory. It doesn't say anywhere to print it out or write it. What's it say? We made a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves, not somebody else. Okay, so see, now I went over 32 minutes. This is now part 2, and I'm not to the point yet, really. So suffer with me just a bit longer. That guy's going to call back.